Okay, so this video is on how to stop over giving and people pleasing. Uh, as someone who used to do this a lot, but so there's this sort of like trope, not trope, but it's like this like the like overly nice person, the overly nice person, the overly good person. Um, that they oftentimes will go too much far and beyond out of their way to accommodate uh someone or something else. So like they'll do too much for someone's birthday, or they'll just do a whole lot of extra stuff, right? Whole lot of extra stuff that's a little bit unnecessary, but it's just like very over the top. Um and what this is this comes from a very deep place that unless you really take some time, maybe like in therapy or like just to kind of just work on yourself, is sort of hard to spot. Um, but if you do, I think it helps you be a lot more authentic, and it helps you be a lot more true to yourself. Because what this essentially is sort of over giving with strings attached. Strings attached in the sense of I'm over giving, hoping that you will give me your um uh I guess love or attention or validation by me having given you all these things. Um so sometimes you see this with guys, right, who spend a bunch of money on girls, or they spend a bunch of money, they buy their girls a bunch of gifts, they do all this stuff, and then they're like, oh, but I did all these things for you, I did all these da, 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 da. But it's like, right there, you know. Because at that point you're not giving, you're not giving from a place of not of loss, but from a place of acceptance that if it doesn't come back, it doesn't matter, you know. So people who and this goes into a much deeper conversation about good and bad and things like that, but people who overgive and people please, it comes from a very deep need of validation. And because maybe they weren't validated as children, maybe they didn't receive the proper love as children, maybe they didn't, from their parents, they never felt seen, or they never felt, you know, appreciated or something like that. So they do all these extra things in order to receive that validation, in order to receive that appreciation. But now you're putting, when you do that, you put the other person in a position and you expect them to give you that because you gave them this, when the world doesn't work like that. People aren't required to give you back because you give something, and rarely is that true, rarely is that the case. um uh and you'll be disappointed, and because what happens is that leads to what happens is that leads to frustration and resentment against the other person. And from the other person, it's like you're holding all these things over my head that I didn't even ask from you in the first place. Um, which is true, which is very, very true. You know, And I'm only talking about this because I've done this. And it took a lot of um reflection to see that aspect, because the first time something like that the first time that got thrown in my face, I was like going above and beyond. And then this person was like, but I never asked you to do that. And I felt triggered. I was like, what? But like, I'm so, that's like, it just didn't hit me right. But I wasn't ready to hear that. I wasn't ready to look at that part of myself that was moving from a deeper motive, from a deeper intention, from an intention of my past, that was using this sort of extra good behavior and people pleasing to get something that I didn't get from when I was younger. Um, so when I first heard that, I was kind of like shook. I was like, me, nah, like, but the more I started sort of like reflecting on it, the more I started to notice it. I was like, damn, like this is true. And then I started to notice it in other people because I saw that part of myself, if that makes sense. Like, so there's this quote by Carl Jung that says, you don't become enlightened by imagining figures of light. You become enlightened by um, casting light on like the darker parts of what is not seen, or some shit like that. I can't really remember the quote, but so that that moment forced me to look at a part of myself that I had never looked at a dark part of myself that I had never given light to, and that I had never really examined or seen. And because I was able to see that in myself, it allowed me to see that part also in other people. Um, because I've been there. So you gotta heal that part. You really gotta do a little bit of digging to see why you're overgiving in the first place, to see why you're people pleasing in the first place. Why are you stepping outside beyond what you're comfortable with and going out of your way to do something for someone else when they never expected that, or maybe they never asked for it, or maybe they never wanted it. Um, and that's a serious question that you should ask yourself. But the best way that I found to kind of stop myself, and this is good because it creates a healthy boundary. What it is when you overstep your own personal boundaries, you build a resentment for having overstepped that boundary. And that's where people, they get in those fights, because then they're like, oh, I did all these things for you, but because you overstepped what you were comfortable with. So the best way to combat this, from what I found, and this works for me, is that to give from a place of zero strings attached. You have to give from a place that even if this person completely disrespected you, if they did the most foul shit to you, if they spit on you and they cussed you out and they damaged your house or whatever, your car, or they spoke bad about you behind your back after you gave them what you gave them, you would still feel good about giving what you gave them. You won't feel like, oh, I should have never gave them that. You know what I mean? That's how you know that you've crossed a little bit over. So, um, so just to put it in a real example, right? Like, let's say, uh, let's say you're about to give a gift, right, to someone that maybe you are in a relationship with or something like that, and you want to go extra, like you want to do you want to get the super nice treatment and all these things, like da da da. And then all of a sudden you think, okay, if this person today were to spit in my face, cuss me out, do all these mean things to me, would I feel resentment for giving them what I'm about to give them? Would I say, dang, I shouldn't have given her or him or whatever all these nice things that I'm about to give them? if that is the case, you need to scale it back. You need to scale back the amount that you're giving to a place where you say, okay, if I do this and this person do all these things to me, I would still be okay with the fact that I gave them this thing. And they took that and then they lost it or whatever. Like that's how you get to a confident place of giving, and not you're not giving from an insecure place, you're giving from a confident place. Um and that will help also relieve those feelings of deep sort of rooted deep-seated resentment that you might have against this person for maybe taking advantage of your kindness or taking advantage of what you're doing. Like don't put yourself in a position to have that be taken advantage of, you know what I mean? um so just think about that, scale it back to a comfortable position. um and that's how you stop people pleasing and stop over giving. Yeah.